Hello friends, my name is Kumar and welcome back to our channel Kumar Programming. This is the fifth part of Docker series where we are going to learn about Docker commands. Docker commands are very useful once we are working on a server whenever our Docker desktop is not available, right? So here in this video we are going to learn about most of the useful Docker commands, okay? And also we will do the practical for each command, right? And friends, in our previous video, we have learned about Docker introductions, where we have seen what is Docker and why we use Docker, right? And why Docker came into the picture. And then after that, we did the Docker installation and we did the initial setup. And also, we have already learned about the Docker architecture, about the Docker client, Docker host, and Docker registry that we have learned in detail in this video. And also, we have created our projects in HTML, in Angular and Node, where we have created our Docker file, and from code we have created Docker file, and from that Docker file we have created Docker image, and from that Docker image we have executed as a container. Okay, so far we have covered all those topics, and if you have not watched all those videos, I would request you to please go and watch those videos first. That would be very helpful to understand our upcoming topics. And now in this video we are going to cover about Docker commands, right? Docker commands, I have categorized all those commands into multiple categories like basic commands. So this is the Docker basic commands category where we are going to learn about very basic commands, right? And then I have categorized the commands which are related to the images that is used to manage the images, right? And the next category we have is a container commands. So that is container commands are basically used to manage the containers, right? Here we have seen images and here we have containers. And also we are required to see the log and monitoring, right? So I have separate category for log and monitoring commands. And after that, I have a category as a Docker Prune command. So Docker Prune is nothing, it's just to remove or clean up unutilized containers and images or volume or network, right? That I have categorized inside the Docker Prune command. And also we have Docker network command, Docker volume command in order to manage our Docker network and volume. And also I have Docker compose commands where we'll see all the Docker compose command, right? This compose. And finally we have Docker swarm command. So this is Docker swarm and we have categorized all those commands there for the Docker swarm, right? I have highlighted these three category into orange because of that we are going to see the list of all those commands, but we are going to do the practical in our upcoming videos. Once we will learn about network, volume, Docker compose and Docker swarm in details, right? Now further proceed and see all these categories and their commands in detail along with the practical. So our very first category is Docker basic commands, right? The first command, which is Docker. Docker keyword itself, it's a very useful command which is used to check all the available Docker commands, right? Now let's see, let's move to our Visual Studio. Here I have created three applications, Angular app, HTML app and our Node application. And also we have created our Docker file for each and every applications, right? Now here I'm going to create a terminal and I'll create a git bash terminal over here. Let me make it a bit bigger. I'll go to the root directory cd tilde. So now I'm in the root directory. Now the first command is Docker. So let's see Docker. If I just write Docker, I'll see here list of all the commands available. And if you see the very first category, which is a common command, right? And here you see in the common command, we have a command like Docker run, Docker execute, Docker build, Docker pull, Docker push, Docker images, Docker login, Docker logout, right? Docker search. And then after that, they have a category as a Docker management command. And inside this Docker management command, you see we have a Docker builder command. And here we have Docker container related command, Docker compose related command, and Docker image, Docker volume, Docker network, right? And Docker init. So these all are the management category. And further they have given a Docker swarm command as well. And here you see Docker swarm commands are there, right? However, swarm commands are not provided here in detail. And then after that, you see these commands are very useful commands that they have given over here. Here we have Docker attach command and Docker history, Docker remove where we remove the container, Docker remove RMI which is used to remove the images, Docker top, Docker update, Docker wait, okay? And also they have provided the global option, right? That option we can provide along with the commands, right? So we are going to see most of all those commands in details, and we will have the practical. And there is one more thing that I would like to tell you here. If you want to get the more detail on any specific command here, for example, here I want to get the detail on docker stop, right? So here I'll put as a docker stop and hyphen hyphen help, okay, which is going to give the more detail about the docker stop command. So here how we can use docker stop, and then we can provide the option, and inside the option we have these hyphen s, that is the signal, and hyphen t, that is the time, right? And then we can provide our container id, and if you want to stop multiple container, we can provide the list of all those container id inside the array, right? Now further move and let's see the next command. So I'll just clear. The very next command which we have is docker version, right? This is used to get the version detail for client as well as server, right? So see docker version, press enter. See, now here you can see the version information related to the client as well as server. So here we have client version and here we have server version, right? And also we can see client is associated with the Windows operating system and server is associated with Linux operating system, right? Now let's see the next command, which is docker info, right? Docker info is used to display the system wide information. System wide in the sense Docker client as well as Docker server information in detail, okay? Docker info, right? Now here you can see for the client we can get the Docker version. Also we can get the plugin details, plugin like Docker Compose plugin, Docker BuildX, and Docker Dev, Docker Init, right? Docker Scout. These all are the plugins that are associated with the client. And also here we can see the details about the server, like how many containers are there in the server. So there are 3 containers as of now, 1 is running and 2 stopped container, right? And how many images are there? There are 4 images are there, right? And what is the server version, and what is the storage, and what is the total memory assigned to the Docker server, and how many CPUs are running inside the Docker. So all those kind of information that we can get it from Docker info command, right? Now let's further move and see the next command. The very next command is docker ps, right? This is a very useful command which is used to see the list of all the running containers. Now let's see in the practical. Docker ps, right? PS means processes. How many processes are running inside the Docker? Processes are nothing, these are the containers, okay? So if I'll press enter, it's going to give you the list of all the running containers. So as of now, if you see, I'm only one container running inside our Docker. And here you will get the detail about the container ID and the image details container which is associated with the image, and the command, the entry point, and when it was created, and what is the current status. So as of now you can see here it's up and running, right? And what is the port associated with this container, and what is the name of this container, right? However, we can see the list of all the running as well as stopped container, right? So now let's see docker ps, and we have to use the option -a, right? So -a is basically provide you list of all the running container as well as stopped container both, right? So let's press enter. Now you can see here we are getting all the 3 containers, and here you can see this container is running up and running, and these 2 containers are stopped, right? And one more thing that I would like to tell over here, suppose that here we have 100 containers, right? And you want to find out a very specific container. So how we can do that? How we can do the search, right? So here docker ps-a, this is the list, and on top of the list we can apply grep, right? So grep, and we have to pass the value, whatever the value that you want to search, okay? So here I'm going to search this HTML, okay? So I'll pass HTML. Now this will give me only that container which is having name as a HTML, okay? So this grep command is very useful when we want to search any specific data on a list, okay? And that can be applied at anywhere on any list. Now let's see the next command. So the very next command is docker login, okay? Docker login is basically used to log in inside our Docker registry. If you see here we have our Docker hub, Docker registry. So we can log in on this Docker Hub, right? How we can log in? Let me just try to log in from the browser. So here I have to search for Docker Hub, and this is the official website of Docker Hub. And here we can sign in, right? So in order to sign in, we have to use our KKY programming. That is the email ID that I'm using. So I'll be using this email ID and then sign in, and I must have to provide the password, right? And now continue. So now I'm able to log in on my Docker Hub. If you don't have account, you can create an account on Docker Hub. That is absolutely free. And this is very, very useful once we want to push our images to the Docker Hub, right? And the same thing we can do by using our Docker CLI command. Now let me log out from here and let's do the login from our CLI. So here just I have to use Docker login, right? Now it's going to ask you for the username. So I have using my username as a kky programming@gmail.com, right? And I have to provide my password. Now press enter and it should be successfully logged in if everything is correct. See, now I'm successfully logged in on my Docker Hub. And similarly, we can log out as well. So now let me log out. So we have to do Docker log out, right? So once you log out, so it's removing the credential from this Docker Hub. So now I am successfully logged out. Now let's move to the next command, which is Docker logout, that already we have seen, right? Now let's move to the next command, which is Docker search. Docker search is very useful command to search images on the Docker Hub, right? So now let's see Docker Hub. Here we can search. So here I'll search for nginx, right? So now see here we have two official image, 1 and 2. So how you can figure it out? You can just select this checkbox, Docker official image. So here we have two official image, more than 1+ billion downloaded, and here more than 100K downloaded, right? The same information that we can get it from our Docker CLI. So let's see here, we can just find Docker search nginx, right? See here we get the name as a nginx, and this is description official build for nginx, and we have stars around 19,000, and this is official. So here we have two official image for nginx, right? And similarly we can do for other images like Docker search Redis, right? Let's search for the Redis. So see here we have only one official image for Redis, that is a Redis only. All right, now let's move to the next command, which is Docker system df, right? So Docker system df is basically used to see the how much disk is being utilized by our server, right? So now let's see that. So now here Docker system df, press enter. Now here you can see as of now we have total 4 images, right? And we have 3 containers, and there's no active container as of now, and we have no local volume since we have not created any volume so far, and we have build cache around 30, right? And here we can see how much memory is being utilized for our image and container and volumes, right? And here we can see how much memory that can be reclaimed, right? Now let's move to the next command, which is Docker inspect, right? So Docker inspect command is used to return the low level information for any Docker object. Any Docker object, that could be a container, that could be an image, it could be a volume, or it could be network, right? Now let's see in the practical. Here command we have Docker ps. This is the container which is running. So here we are going to inspect this particular container. So here Docker inspect, and we will give this container ID, okay? Whatever object that you want to inspect. See, now here you can get the lot of information at the very low level for this particular container, like what is the container ID we have, and when this container was created, and what is the current state for this container, and what is the image associated for this container. And also we can see a lot of more information, like what is the port binding we have for this container. And also we can see many more information at a very low level for this particular container. If we have passed any environment variable, we can see these details for the environment here. And finally here we have the detail about the network, right? Network that we are going to see in detail in our upcoming videos. So that is the use of docker inspect command. Similarly, we can inspect our images as well. So docker images, docker images, right? Docker images. So here you can see the list of all those images. Suppose that I want to inspect this docker ng app. So I'll just docker inspect and docker ng app. So now you can see for that particular image, you can see the details at a very low level, right? Related with the what is image ID, when it was created, and what is the size here, what is the operating system, right? So all those information that you can get it from docker inspect command for any object inside the docker. Now further move and see the next command, which is docker stats. So basically docker stats command is useful to see the stat of running containers, right? So now let's see here docker stats. Okay, so docker stats provide you list of all the running containers and how much CPUs are going to be utilized, how much memory is going to be utilized, and how much memory is there, right? And how much memory percentage are being utilized, and what is the net input output, what is the block input output, and what is the process ID. So all these information that we can get it for running containers. If we have multiple running containers, so we will get the list of all those multiple running containers over here, right? So these all are the commands belongs to the basic categories and you must be knowing about it, right? And I hope that all these commands are clear to you. Now let's move to the next category, which is image and container commands, right? So now let's see our first command for the image management is docker build command. Okay. So if you remember that in our previous video, we have created three applications. One is Node, one in HTML and one in Angular, right? And we created Docker file for each and every application, right? And from that Docker file, we executed docker build command, which generate the image, right? And once image was generated, then we have executed this image as a container, right? So now let me show you that quickly, that what we have done in our previous videos. So here, if you see, here we have created three applications, one in Angular, one in HTML, and one in Node. And we have created a Docker file, right, for each and every application. So if you see here in the Docker file, we have learned about the keyword from, work directory, copy, run, expose, command, and many more, right? So if you want to create a Docker file and want to learn, and if you have not watched that video, I would suggest you to please watch that video before proceeding this. And now if you see here, similarly, we created the Docker file for our HTML application here, right? And then we have created a Docker file for our Node application as well. And this Docker file is responsible to build an image, okay, by executing these commands line by line. Okay, so now let's do the practical here. I'll open my terminal here. Let's expand it and Docker build, right? And then I have to provide the tag name for the image. So I'll give -t that, and I'll give the image name. So I'll give prefix as a img, and then I'll give as a node app, right? And remember that we have to provide this Docker file path as well, right here. So if you're working on a root directory, you can just provide dot represents the root directory. If you're not on a root directory, then we have to provide the complete path for the Docker file. So I'll copy the path for this file because I'm not in the root directory. I'll give my path, right? I'll remove this Docker file because this is the directory, right? Now I press enter. So as soon as I press enter, this docker build command is going to execute all the commands which are available in Docker file. So you can see here the first command is getting executed, which is downloading the node, and then it's going to execute. Once first command is completed, then it's going to execute the second command, third command, and fourth command. So see here, it's creating the work directory, then it's copying everything, and finally it's running install, right? Once it is done, then it's generated an image. Okay, so now let's see Docker images. See, our images got ready over here. You can verify the same, this image ID. This is the short form of the image ID, and here you can verify this image ID URL. Okay, so in this way we can build our image by using our Docker file with the command docker build, right? Now let's move to the next command. The very next command is Docker images. Docker images is mainly used to show the list of all the available image inside the Docker, right? We have already used it previously, but now let's see in the practical demonstration. Here, I'll use my Docker images, right? So it's going to give you the list of all those images which are available inside my Docker server. So if you see that recently we have created our image img node app, right? And it was created, and previously we have created other images as well, right? Also we have created Redis, and here we can see what is the tag and what is the image ID and when it was created and what is the size of this particular image. Now let's move to the next command, which is Docker pull, right? So Docker pull we use when we are required to pull an image from our Docker hub to our Docker server, right? So how we can pull that image? Now let me go back here, and here Docker pull. And if you want to pull any image, suppose that I want to pull Redis, so I'll give here Redis. So it's going to pull Redis image from Docker hub to our Docker server. So now press enter. Now you can see if you're not using any tag, so it's going to use the latest tag. So now if you see here, our image got pulled from our Docker hub. Now we can verify Docker images. And here you can see we have our Redis image for now. Now let's move to the next command. The very next command is Docker push. Docker push mainly we use once we are required to push our image to the Docker hub, right? Previously we have pulled the image from Docker hub. Now we want to push the image to the Docker hub. So once we require to push an image to the Docker hub, we need to log in inside our Docker hub. So now let's see. We have already learned about how to log in. So I'll do that Docker login here, right? And I have to provide my user ID, which is kky programming@gmail.com, and I have to provide my password, right? It should be successfully logged in if everything is correct. Yeah, so I'm successfully logged in on my Docker hub. But before pushing to the repository, let me show you that where exactly it will go. So if you see here in my Docker hub, here I have the repository. So once I'll push my image, it will come over here in this KKY programming repository. Okay, since we have already created one of the image earlier in our previous video, so it's already there. So I'm going to create a tag for an image and push it over here. Now let's see how we can do that. So here I'll try to find out which image I have to do. So here Docker images, right? So I'm going to push for Docker ng app. Okay, so here what I'll do, first of all I need to create a tag, and then after that we have to push. Okay, so Docker tag, and the tag name I'll provide as a KKY programming, right? You can give any name, you can provide any tag, right? And forward slash, and here forward slash, and then I'll give the image name, which is Docker ng app, right? And I give the version here tag as a v1, right? And we have to provide this image also, Docker ng app. Okay, so this is the tag name. By this tag name we are going to push our image to our Docker repository, Docker hub, for this Docker ng app. Okay, so now let's give this tag to the Docker. So here I'm getting error as a no such image. Okay, so here I have provided in a wrong order. So here we have to give as this tag name right after this image name. Okay, so I'll remove this Docker tag. We are going to provide the tag for Docker ng app, and then this is the tag that we are going to publish to our Docker hub, right? Now let's press enter. So now it's going to create a new tag. Okay, and now we can push this tag to our repository. So here we have to use our Docker push command, Docker push, and then we can push this entire tag. Okay, press enter. Now it's going to push this image to the Docker hub. So see, now it's pushing this image to the Docker hub. So it may take some time because it could be around 246 MB, more than 246 MB. So here you can see this image is getting pushed. So as of now it's 210.11. So now you can see this image is pushed successfully, and we can verify the same in our Docker Hub. Let's go back and see here, refresh this. Now go to the repository. Now here you can see, right, KKY programming docker ng app, right? So this is just now pushed here. This is asking for the description, so here we can provide as a docker ng app. Okay, and this should be having a category. We can provide a category over here, like it should be a developer tool, and we can update it. Okay, so here you can see we have our images pushed over here in our Docker Hub. Okay, so this is the way that we can push our image to the Docker Hub, and we will see in detail once we will learn about how to push our images to the Docker Hub in our upcoming videos. Now let's see the next command. The very next command, which is docker tag, right? So we have already seen that docker tag, how we can do that, and once we have given a tag name to an image, then we can push that tag to the Docker Hub, right? Now let's see the next command, which is docker history, right? So basically this command is used to get the history of any Docker image. Okay, now let's see how we can do that. So here I'll find Docker images first, sorry, Docker images, right? So I'm going to find this history for docker ng app. Okay, so I'll write the command as a docker history, and then I'll put this image name. Okay, and it's going to give the history of this particular image. Okay, the very next command is docker rmi. Okay, docker rmi is mainly used to remove the images. You can remove one or more images. Now see how we can do that. So here, first of all, let's see docker images, docker images. Okay, now here we have list of all our images, image node app, docker node app, docker ng app, redis, right? So we can remove our all those images. How we can remove that? So here I'll use the command as a docker rmi. Okay, and I'll put this redis. I can give the name, also I can give the ID. Okay, so if I give the name as a docker remove ID, see now it's untagged and it's got deleted. Okay, and we can do by using our ID as well. So I'm going to docker rmi, and then I'll remove the newly image which we have created is this one. Okay, so I'll put this. It's not going to be removed because this is already associated with this docker node app, right? So I'll remove this ng-inx for now, or I can remove this test app. Okay, so the ID for test app is this. So here docker rmi and use this image ID. Okay, so now it's going to remove that image as well. We can verify the same docker images. So here you can see our Redis image as well as test app image both are removed from our Docker server, right? So these commands are mainly used to manage our images, that is docker build, docker image, docker pull, docker push, docker tag, docker history, docker rmi, right? Now further we are going to see the commands which is used to manage the Docker container. So friends, so far we have built our image from the Docker file and we have seen all those commands related with the Docker image, right? Now from this image we are going to create a container. Okay, so that all those commands we are going to see now. In order to manage the container, the very first command which we have is docker ps. Okay, so docker ps already we have seen that it shows the list of all the running container. Okay, now let's see in the practical. Here clear and docker ps, right? So as of now only one container is running, so we can see this running container detail over here. And if you want to see that all the containers which are stopped as well, so here we have to use the command docker ps-a. Okay, so now it's going to see the list of all the containers which are stopped as well as running both. Now let's see the next command. The very next command is docker create, and this is very important command because we have built our image. Now we are going to create the container from the image. Okay, so this docker create command is used to create a container from an image. Okay, now let's see how we can do that. So here we have to provide as a command docker create. So here I have to provide the name of the container by using option -- name and then give the container name. And here I have given the name of the container as a container -node -app, and I have to provide my image name, the image from where we are going to create the container, right? So here I'll give img -node -app, right? That image we have already created, right? So now let's press enter. So now it's going to create a container. See, now this container is created, but this container is not started yet. See, now we can see here docker ps-a. So you can see here as of now we have 4 container. This 197, that's just now we have created. Status, you can see it's created, it's not started, right? Now, so now let's see the next command. So now let's move to the next command, which is docker run. Okay, so docker run command is used to run a particular container. Now let's see how we can do that. So here you can see we have created our docker container, right? Now we are going to run this container. So here docker run command, right? And we have to run this container in a detached mode. So I have to pass the option as a -d, right? -d is going to detach this container from the CLI. Okay, so our CLI will be free, and after that we have to provide our port. So we can see which port is associated with our application. Here you can see our port is associated with 8080. Okay, so here we will give as a 8080 port, and internally this container is associated with the docker with the port 8080. So this is the port that we are going to expose. So if you see here, this 8080 is already being used by this container, so we will give this another port here. Okay, so I'll give as a 8081. Okay, and right after that we have to provide our image name. So image name that we are using is img node app, right? So here I'll use img -node -app, right? And we will press enter. So now it's going to start the container, it's going to run the container. Okay, so our image got executed as a container. Okay, now let's see docker ps. If we run the docker ps command, we could see that our container, right? See, this container is running, which is associated with image node app, and we can see this our application is running. Now let's see here, let's open localhost 8081, right? So 8081, see our application is running. Okay, we can see other endpoints. Contact, please contact to Kumar Programming. So our application is running on 8081 port, which is exposed. Okay, but internally it's connected with the 8080 port inside the docker, right? Great. So friends, I hope that now you are understanding these commands. Now let's move to the next command. The very next command inside our docker is docker start, right? So if we have any stopped any container, we can start our container as well. So I'll show you all these commands: docker stop, start, and docker restart, and docker pause. Okay, all 4 commands in action here. Docker ps. Okay, so this is going to give the list of all the running containers. So this is my container. Now here I'm going to stop this container. Okay, so docker stop, right? Now this container should be stopped now. See, now our container is stopped. We can verify it here by using our docker ps-a command. See, img node app, this container is exited. Okay, it means it's being stopped. Now we can start this container. So docker start, and we can start this container. Okay, so now it's going to start this container. This container is started. We can verify by using docker ps-a command. Okay, see, so now you can see this image node app is up and running here. Okay, and now we can use the restart as well. So here docker restart, and we will give this container id. Now it's going to restart this container. Now this container is restarted. See, now here we can verify docker ps-a, right? So see, now this container is restarted. Okay, now we can pause our container as well. How we can do that? Let's see. Docker pause, and we can use the same container id here. Now our container is paused. We can see docker ps-a command, you can see it's up, but it's paused. You can see here status clearly is paused. Okay. Now further move to the next command. So our very next command is docker unpause. Okay. So once we have paused our container, we can unpause our container as well. Okay. So here how we can do that, docker ps-a. So it will give the list of all those containers. So see here our container is paused. We can unpause it. How we can do that, docker unpause command, and we can give this container ID, right? Now our container is unpaused. Okay. So we can verify docker ps-a. Now our container is up and running. Okay. Now let's move to the next command. The very next command is docker rm. Okay. That is used to remove the containers. Okay. You can remove one or more containers by using docker rm command. Okay. So now let's see that. Here again I'll use docker ps-a, right? Now I'm going to remove the container which just I have created. Okay. So here I'll use docker, or I can use these containers. Okay. Docker rm, and I'll delete this container which I have created, docker rm, and remove it. Okay. So now this container is going to be removed. See, now we can verify docker ps-a. Now as of now we have only 4 container. Okay. Now we will remove this container as well because it's not associated anywhere. So here docker rm, and we will give this container ID. If we have container name, we can give the container name as well. Okay. So now this container is also removed. We can verify docker ps-a. So see, as of now only we have 3 containers. Okay. And 2 out of them are running. Now let's move to the next command, which is docker rename. So I'll give a task to you to use this docker rename command by your own. Now further we will move to the next command, which is docker execute. Okay, docker exec. And docker execute command basically used to run a command inside a running container. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. Let's move to our Visual Studio. Here first of all, let's find out our list of all the docker running containers. So here docker ps-a. Okay. So this is the command. So this is the container which is running as of now. I'll go inside this container. Okay. So this container is like a computer, right? So I have to go inside my computer first, and then after that I can execute the commands. Okay. So how we can go inside our container? So we have a command as a docker execute, docker exe, and then we have to be used as an interactive terminal. Okay, so here I'll use option as a -it, and then I'll give this container name where we have to go inside. Okay, and then we have to provide sh, that is cells. Okay, so it's going to open in a cell. Okay, so let's press enter, and now it should be going inside the container. Okay, so now you are inside the container. Here you can see pwd. As of now, the present working directory is user source app, which is inside our container. Here we can just ls. So see, we have our docker file, readme file, node module, package log.json, package.json, and source folder. Now let's go inside our source folder, cd src, right, ls. So in this our source folder we have server.js file, and here we can execute whatever command that we want inside a running container. Okay, I hope this command is clear to you. Now let's move to the next command, but before that we have to be exit from this container. Okay, so we can just use exit command. Now we are exited from the container. Now let's move to the next command. The very next command is docker port. So docker port is used to get the detail of the port which is associated with the container, right? So now let's see. Here I'll use docker ps. So this is my container. Here I'll use docker port, and I'll give this container ID. Okay, so now here we will get that what is the port associated with this container. So this port is associated internally TCP. It means internally it's associated with 808 port, and publicly it got exposed at 8081 port, right? And similarly we can get the information about the second container as well. Let's see here, docker port, and I'll give this container ID. Okay, so this container is associated with 808 port itself, right? So see here, internally it's exposed at the 8080 port in TCP, and externally it's exposed at 8080 port So this container is exposed at 808 port and this container is exposed at 8081 port, right? So we are running same application but on a two different port. So friends, that I hope you understood about the Docker image and Docker containers commands. Now we are going to move to the next category, which is log and monitoring commands. Okay. So in order to see the logs and monitor our images and containers, the very first command come as a docker ps-a, right? So docker ps-a, that is already we have discussed. It is used to show the list of all the running containers as well as stopped container, right? The very next command which we have docker logs. Okay, so docker logs is used to see the log information about any containers. Now see how we can do that. So in order to see the logs, first of all we will find the container. So docker ps-a. So I'm going to use this container for our log. So here docker logs, right? And -f, that is follow. It means whenever any changes will happen in the log, it will be displayed over here, okay, for that specific container. So I'm going to use this container here, right? Now see, this is the three logs are available inside the this container. Okay, now I'll move out from this container. In order to move out, we have to be press Ctrl C. Okay, so now we have exited from this container. Now we'll see the log from the another container which is running, docker logs -f, and then I'll push this container. Okay, so these logs are available inside this container, and if any new log is going to be generated, it's going to be, we are going to see over here, right? Now let's come out from this container and move to the next command. So the very next command, which is docker events. Okay, docker events is used to get the list of all the events that is going to be happen inside the docker container. Okay, now let's see how we can do that. So here docker events. Okay, simply we will just type docker events, and now what we will do from the background, see here what I'll do, I'll stop this container, docker node app container. Okay, so see, I'm going to stop this container, right? So now here you can see, once we stop this container, we are able to see all those logs here, right? So see here, container is killed, then it got disconnected from the network and it got die. Okay, now if we just start this container, see now that whatever events is happening inside the background of any containers, we can see all those events over here. Okay, so see, I just started this container and you can see here this container got started, right? So now let's move out. In order to move out, we have to press Ctrl C, make it clear, and move to the next command. The very next command, which is docker top. So docker top is basically used to see how many processes are running inside a container. Okay, now let's see in action here, docker ps. So I'm going to see what all the processes are running inside this container. Here I'll use docker top and I'll use this container ID. So as of now, see, here is one process is running, which is server.js with the ID root, and which process ID is 3548, and parent process ID is 3527, and start time, and this is the command. Okay, now we'll move to the next command here, clear. The very next command is docker stats, which we have already seen, right? But let's see once again here, docker stats. So docker stats is going to provide you how much CPU and how much memory is being and how much network is being utilized for any running container. So as of now, two containers are running. You can see here, this is the first container and this is the second container, and you see here, this is the CPU utilization and this is memory utilization, and this is the percentage of memory utilization, and this is the network output, and this is the block output, and this is the process ID. Okay, now let's move to the next command here. The very next command, docker port, right? In order to know that the port detail which is associated with the container, which we have already seen in our container related commands. Okay, right? So these commands are mainly used to log and monitoring for our images and containers. Okay, And I hope that this is clear to you. Now let's move to the next category, which is Docker Prune command. Okay, Docker Prune command used to clean up unused images and containers are dangling containers. Dangling container, it means like the container which are not associated with any images or the resources which are not used anymore. Okay, so we can remove all those images and we can remove all those objects and we can reclaim our memory. Okay, so now let's see the very first command, which is docker system prune. So docker system prune is going to remove all the resources. It could be your image, container, network, or volume, right, which are not in use, are dangling. Okay, so now let's see how we can do that. Here, docker system prune, it's going to tell you the warning, and this will remove all the stopped container, all the network not used, at least one container, all the dangling images, and all unused build cache. Okay, so now here we will press yes. So see, it's removed the cache and it's removed the container as well, which was not used at all. Okay, so now we can see here docker ps-a. See, as of now only we have two containers and one container was removed because that was not in use, that was stopped container. Okay, right, now let's move to the next command, which is docker image prune. So mainly this docker image prune command is used to remove all the dangling image or unused images, right, which are not associated with any containers. So now let's see how we can do that. So here, docker image prune command, it's going to give you a warning like it will remove all the dangling images. Okay, I'll press Y and press enter. Now let's move to the next command, which is docker container prune. Okay, so docker container prune also remove the dangling container which are not associated or which are not in use. Okay, and docker volume, similarly we can use to remove the volumes which are not in use, and docker network, that is also. So all these resources can be pruned if they are not in use. Okay, and if you are using the docker system, that is the topmost command, and once we execute this docker system, it's going to remove all the resources, whether it's image, container, network, or volume. Okay, the very next command, which is docker builder prune. Docker builder prune is basically remove all the resources from builder which are not in use. Okay, and friends, now I'm going to show you that how you can stop all the containers in a single command and how we can remove all those containers. Okay, now let's see that. Clear. Now here we will use command as a docker stop. Okay, we have to stop our containers and we will give the dollar sign, and inside this dollar sign, and we will give the list of all the containers. So docker ps-a, and we have to quit all those containers, so we'll give the option a -q. Okay, so this command is going to stop all the running containers. So now you can see these two containers were running and that has been stopped. So we can verify it, docker ps-a. Okay, so you can see these both of the containers are stopped. Okay, and now we want to remove both of the containers altogether. How we can do that? So docker rm, right, and we will give the list of all those container over here, docker ps-a-q. Okay, so now it's going to remove the containers. So now these two containers have been removed. We can verify docker ps-a. So none of the containers should be running as of now. See, so as of now there is no container available. So friends, I hope that these commands are clear to you. Friends, this video is getting lengthy, so I'll create a part 2 where we will learn about commands related with the docker compose, docker network, docker volume, and docker swarm. Okay, so now in our next video we are going to learn about docker compose. And friends, this is a very humble request to all of you. If you have learned something from this video, then please don't go without subscribing this channel, and you can like this and you can share this video to your friends. And don't forget to press the bell icon so you'll get the notification of all of my upcoming videos. That's all for the day. I'll see you in my next video. Till then, take care and keep learning.